From a deadly helicopter crash to a spiritual quest gone sideways, plus a hunter who got ambushed by a grizzly bear, welcome to Alaska Gone Wrong. Number 10. Helicopter disaster. Something that's becoming very popular in Alaska is heli-skiing. This is when you go skiing down the side of a mountain with the help of a helicopter. Now, that doesn't sound dangerous at all, right? You'd gladly give it a shot, wouldn't you? I mean, really, what could possibly go wrong? Well, what went wrong is that on March 27, 2021, a helicopter carrying one of the wealthiest men in the world, Peter Kellner, crashed in the Chugach Mountains of Alaska. The crash left 5 people dead and 1 hospitalized, and it's since been labeled the deadliest heli-skiing aviation accident in the history of North America. The helicopter had been on the last run of the day. Nobody knows why exactly the accident occurred, but we do know that the last fatal heli-skiing accident was in 1994 in Nevada and was caused by mechanical failure. This latest disaster is so fresh that we haven't yet seen the flight records. In any case, whether you're thinking of heli-skiing, Alaska can be a very dangerous place. Getting inside of a helicopter and then jumping out of it to rush down the side of a frozen mountain on a pair of flat stilts is honestly just asking for trouble. Number 9. The spiritual quest. Remember, Alaska isn't just dangerous by air. A long stroll could end up deadly. In August of 2018, a man wandered 14 miles, 22 kilometers into a valley on the west side of Hatcher Pass. He barely carried anything with him. He didn't have a rifle or bear spray to protect himself, and he only had about 5 pounds of oatmeal to keep him alive. But that was okay, as the man's plan was to stay in a small cabin for several months while trying to find the meaning of life. His name was Vladimir Kostenko, and he was on a spiritual quest. Well, this spiritual quest was a huge failure. Vladimir wanted to find his purpose on Earth, and what he found instead was likely a slow, cold, and miserable death. Vladimir was borrowing the cabin from a friend. After a few months, Vladimir stopped sending messages from his cell phone back to his friend. The friend got worried and hired a helicopter to take him out to the wilderness cabin, where he found it locked and empty. There was no sign of Vladimir. The cabin had been cleaned up nicely, and Vladimir had even nailed it shut before leaving. Nobody knows what happened to Vladimir. He probably tried walking from the cabin back to civilization, ended up getting lost, and then had a very bad time freezing to death in the wilderness. It's been over 2 years since Vladimir went on a spiritual quest, and he has yet to be seen. Number 8. Garbage truck gone wrong. In Alaska, something as simple as taking out the trash can prove fatal. An employee of Blue Arctic Waste was recently trying to empty the trash can in front of someone's house in Anchorage when he was run over by his own garbage truck. This person's name was Robin E. Hager, and he was 62 years old. It was a Thursday morning, according to the Anchorage Police Department, when authorities were called to the 5200 block of Caribou Avenue at around 7 in the morning. The initial investigation proved that Robin had pulled up to the residence in his garbage truck. He was getting ready to empty the trash cans, and then after lowering the arm of the truck, the arm was unable to lift the garbage can because it was literally frozen to the icy ground. Robin got out of his truck and tried to get the trash can off the ground. The truck slid on the ice, the extended arm knocked Robin over, and he was crushed underneath his very own garbage truck. Sadly, Robin didn't make it. This was one of those 1 in a million accidents that can only happen in Alaska. Wouldn't you rather live somewhere warm where these types of things don't happen? Number 7. A man in Ohio was recently mauled to death by a national park and preserve in what authorities have called a surprise attack. According to NBC News, this was the first known fatal bear attack to ever happen in this Alaska National Park since it was established in 1980. The park covers at least 13 million acres, bordering Canada's Yukon Territory. According to Jan Maslin, the park spokeswoman, the Ohio man and his hunting partner killed a moose early on a Saturday evening and went back later to salvage the meat. One of the hunters took a load of meat back to camp while the other stayed behind to prepare a second load. That was when the guy transporting the meat was charged by a hungry and rather upset bear. In short, the bear ambushed him. The man managed to fire off a shot and scare the bear away, but unknown to him, he scared the bear straight towards his friend. While the second man prepared the meat, the bear attacked. He didn't have a gun handy, and so the bear mauled him, chewed him up a little bit, and left him for dead. Imagine that, a hunter without a gun. I don't know about you, but if I were deep in a wild national park in Alaska full of bears, I'd make sure to have a weapon on me at all times. Number 6. Kayaking gone wrong. Even kayaking can prove deadly in Alaska. The unpredictable ice-cold waters mean that if you make one mistake, it could be your last. 3 kayakers were recently found floating in the water near Valdez Glacier. Authorities in Alaska were investigating the deaths of the kayakers after an unnamed caller discovered their bodies just kind of bobbing in the water. Nobody at the time could figure out what exactly happened to the kayakers, and the authorities were even having a difficult time identifying them. Plus, the shedding of the ice of the nearby glacier made it difficult for rescue responders to even reach the bodies. The police were quick to rule out foul play, but what happened to the kayakers is still a mystery. It's hard to imagine they all fell out of the kayak at once and froze to death. But this is just one of those things that can happen when you vanish into the Alaskan wilderness, where no one can hear you scream. Number 5. Deadly plane crash. Plane crashes are way too common in Alaska. The weather can get unfriendly without warning, and the small airplanes up there are more susceptible to accidents. Would you ever fly on an airplane in northern Alaska? Maybe you'll reconsider after hearing this story. A commuter airplane recently fell out of the sky and crashed near a small airport near an Alaskan community on the Bering Sea. The commuter plane was carrying 42 people at the time, including a high school swimming team. The plane went off the runway while trying to land, critically injuring 2 of the passengers and causing at least 10 others to receive medical attention. Luckily, in this case, all the students were completely fine. There were no deaths, though the swim team was definitely shaken up. The crash took place near Unalaska, where Dutch Harbor is located, one of the biggest fishing ports in all of the United States. The flight itself was operated by Peninsula Airways. It was probably forced to make the sketchy landing because of high winds. Have you ever been on an airplane that was knocked around severely by wild weather? What happened? Did it lose power for a second? Did you free fall at all? Tell me your story in the comment section down below. Then remember to subscribe to American Eye if you haven't already. Number 4. The 1964 Alaska earthquake. One of the biggest things to ever go wrong in Alaska was back in 1964. This was the year that the strongest earthquake ever recorded in the United States or Canada struck Prince William Sound, about 74 miles, 110 kilometers from Anchorage. Almost every resident of Alaska felt the power of the 9.2 magnitude earthquake. It was so strong that it wobbled the Space Needle in Seattle over 1,200 miles, 1,800 kilometers away. In fact, the earthquake was so great that it registered in every single state except for Connecticut, Delaware, and Rhode Island. The 1964 Alaska earthquake happened at 5:36 p.m. on March 27, 1964. It was Good Friday. According to History.com, sewer and gas lines broke, there were telephone and electrical failures all across Alaska, and some eyewitnesses described seeing asphalt roads bending like waves as the earthquake literally rippled the surface of the earth. Buildings were uprooted, cars were flipped on their sides, and entire homes were ripped asunder. The earthquake was so strong that the earth rang like a bell. And of course, no earthquake is complete without a devastating tsunami, a couple of landslides, and parts of the land being dumped into the sea. In the end, 131 people died, and Alaska was placed in history as the location of this monumental national disaster. Number 3. The biggest tsunami. If you thought the 1964 earthquake was bad, just wait until you hear about the tsunami from 1958. The tsunami was the tallest ever recorded in human history. We're all familiar with what happens when you get hit by a 5-foot, 1.5-meter wave on the beach. It can knock a person over easily. But the wave that smashed into Lituya Bay on July 9th was 1,720 feet, 530 meters tall. The tsunami was so big that if it had hit New York City, it likely would have knocked over every last building, flooding every single subway system, and drowned every last person. Luckily for the residents of Lituya Bay, the tsunami didn't hit their town. It also wasn't directly caused by an earthquake. A small earthquake caused about 40 million cubic yards of rock above the shore of Lituya Bay to become loose and fall into the water. This enormous quantity of rock fell 3,000 feet, 900 meters, into the Gilbert Inlet and created the wave. This is what we call a local tsunami. The wave was generated quickly. It rose over 1,700 feet, 530 meters above sea level, and wiped all trees and vegetation from the nearby cliffs, smashed into a few boats, and then was over. If there had been a surfer there to surf that wave, they would have broken the world record, and probably a few bones as well. Number 2. Fairbanks Bus 142. Fairbanks Bus 142 is known by many names. Some call it the Into the Wild bus, and some just call it the bus. Whatever you call it, the bus is famous for many cases of Alaska gone wrong. This is because the bus sat undisturbed for 60 years in a woody clearing near a riverbank. It was a symbol for Alaskan outback life and those seeking adventures in the last frontier. It became famous after Christopher McCandless died inside while trying to live off the land. Christopher became stranded because of an impassable river. He fell sick, then died of starvation. This guy's story was made into a best-selling book and later on a film. And these ended up being the inspiration for a lot of people seeking out the bus in the Alaskan wilderness. But most of these trips went terribly wrong. Visitors ended up getting sick, getting stuck, they got injured, they suffered hypothermia, and sometimes they died. A tourist died trying to cross the river to reach the bus in 2010, and another died just a few years ago after getting swept away in the very river that trapped Christopher McCandless on the other side. In lieu of all these unfortunate trips gone wrong, the government stepped in and took the bus out. It was airlifted from the area in 2020, officially ruining everyone's dreams of visiting the famous bus and maybe even getting swept away in an angry river. Number 1. The Alaskan Triangle. Since 1988, a desolate expanse of nothingness in Alaska has claimed the lives of about 16,000 visitors. This is known as the Alaska Triangle. It's a vast region of untouched wilderness, rich with icy mountains and empty tundra. To this day, nobody has any idea why this remote and unexplored place is so dangerous or why so many people's trips into the area go horribly, horribly wrong. In fact, nobody can find a scientific explanation for why 16,000 people have vanished into the thin air here. Nobody's sure if it's all a big coincidence or if something terrifying is lurking out there in the Alaska Triangle. All we know for sure is that 1 out of every 250 people who have ever entered the Alaska Triangle have gone missing, never to be found. But it's not only the Alaska Triangle that's terrifying. According to Strange Outdoors, anywhere between 500 and 2,000 people go missing in Alaska every single year and are never seen from again. This is despite hundreds and hundreds of rescue missions being launched by the authorities. We don't know what's going on in Alaska, but if you're planning a trip into the wilderness, you'd better have your affairs in order. Have you ever had trouble in Alaska? If so, write about it in the comments. Thanks for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this, and we'll see you next time right here on American Eye.